Sorry from 17 once again. This is a bonus video for my Dark Souls 2 DLC walkthrough, Crown of the Sunken King. So, this video was originally a little bit longer because I did a few other things, but I trimmed them out because they were boring. The first thing that got cut was me killing the T-Rex creatures in the giant cavernous room, just to show you that, you know, it can be done, but why would you? And it was just boring. It was just me waiting for the attacks, rolling, attacking. Each of them takes about 5 or 6 slashes. It's just the most tedious thing on the planet. So I dropped that because it was about 7 minutes of footage and nobody wants to see that. And even if I sped it up, it had just diminished the whole point of it being there. So I just trimmed it. So instead, what we have on offer here is I'm going to be showing you me killing Jester Thomas and finding the optional boss of the DLC. Although I suppose if you want to be really technical, everything in the DLC is kind of optional. But it allows me to talk about a few things with the game, which I feel really need to be said. So the DLC is the first extension of Dark Souls 2 beyond the main game. You know, it's embracing a lot of the patches, a lot of the twists, a lot of the changes. First one being the stunlocks no longer have the same power that they did, which I've not really tested yet because I haven't PvP'd post-patch. But this sounds like it's going to be a pretty important thing. However, I think it might have had more adverse effect on the PvE than the devs realise. Because I'm really curious as to how much playtesting goes into the game after they incorporate the changes that they're making. Because I'm not too sure all that much does, because why would it? At this moment in time, surely aren't the team moving on to other things? You know, like tweaking the DLCs, playtesting them. And it makes me think that maybe they're overlooking some things. And a good example of this was when they patched the curved weapons. So they wanted to remove the ability to backstep parry, a technique which a lot of people thought was ruining PvP, which they addressed. But when they addressed it, it was almost like they deactivated the parry frames on curved weapons. So if you tried to parry with any of them, they just didn't work. You know, you could do the timing of any of the parries on the game, none of them seemed to register at all, it just seemed to be broken. And then, on the most recent patch, they addressed this, and then they reverted it back to what it was. However, you can't cancel the animation. So that right there shows that they noticed that this was a problem, they fixed it to the way they intended it to be, and that those weapons now work as they were intended without the exploit of the backstep. And I had a video earlier on where I did a no-heal against the Gank Squad using the Monastery Scimitar. And there was an individual on that video who is essentially, as we speak, arguing with every single person who tries to tell him differently, because his opinion is incredibly stubborn, and he has a prejudice against the Monastery Scimitar. I assume he's probably had some bad fights in PvP where he's lost due to it and it's left a bitter taste in his mouth. But at this moment in time, he's on a little bit of a tirade saying how the weapon requires 0 skill. That's in PvE, not PvP. And that it's broken and unbalanced, and From broke it instead of fixing it, when everything we've seen so far from the patch notes proves that From has it working as it's intended. Which is, it makes the parry at the beginning of the animation rather in the middle of it. Which, when you think about it, it allows you to parry things faster. That's the ability of it. It is the top tier parry item right now. As with a lot of the curved weapons, they are the best way to do quick parries, because if you choose the other ones, it's a completely different timing, but the skill set is exactly the same. You wait for the time where the parry works, you press the button to do the parry. The only difference is the Monastery Scimitar is more responsive in this approach, so the parries in the main game with a shield are very close to what a PvP parry would feel like. It's almost simulating the lag. But this person can't seem to understand that dodging an attack requires waiting for a specific time and pressing a button. So dodging an attack and parrying an attack are the exact same things materialized in 2 different ways. The only difference being the parry allows you to get a very damaging riposte. But this person openly says that they have no problem with the riposte, it's the lack of skill and broken nature of the Monastery Scimitar, which everyone has tried to say to this person, it's just you. There are a lot of people that have problems with it. All those problems are in PvP, because it allows people to sight parry, which is an incredibly powerful thing when the standard shield does not. In PvE, nobody fucking cares, because it's PvE. But this person even after having contradicted themselves, just will not stop. And I just didn't reply, you know. I got to the point where it's like, dude, it's just you, and that's the end of it. And I just leave people to their own delusions, because unfortunately, it's his opinion, and he's not changing it because he's being really stubborn. And nor should he, really, but I don't have to listen to it. That's my problem here. And it all stems from the fact that he does not like this weapon. And there's a lot of things in these games that people don't like, and that they openly speak out about, but it doesn't make them any less the way they were intended to work. You know, everybody hates soul memory, but it works just as the developers wanted it to. Does that mean it's broken and unbalanced? No, it means it is what it is. And I just think it's really silly for this person to just continue doing what he's doing, even after people have just told him to drop it. And, you know, it's just the internet being the internet, and I try not to involve myself with much of it. I will bite originally to try and elucidate my thoughts, but after a while you come to realise that there are some people that would rather have pedantic discussion / arguments online than anything else, and it's just a waste of time. So I'm leaving my subscribers to continue their little, you know, stubborn appeal, because it's not going to work. The guy's obviously just going to continue. He's got something up his ass for that weapon, and, you know, it's the way he wants to conduct himself. But this is Rockshield the Boulder. This guy Lloyds as you, and it's hilarious watching people on their Let's Plays of the DLC who don't know what Lloyds do. And I hate to pick an easy subject here, but Darkside Phil, my buddy Phil, thought the game was cheating him because he couldn't heal. But that's just the side effect of the Lloyd's Talisman. And I would love to say that the game never tells you that Lloydses do what they do. But if Phil had got into the habit of reading the items that he was picking up, he might have known this. So instead, if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. He has some really interesting fights against this NPC. And this NPC is put in a very trollish place because he's in the middle of the bridge. And it's difficult to roll past him. It's difficult to do a lot of things. And he has a spear, he's very fast, and he's governed by the rules that all NPCs on this game are governed by, which is a different set than you are, which is one of the things that upset me the most when I was making my playthrough. But after you've killed him, he gives you access to the bonfire. Hit up on the bonfire, and then you can move into the Cave of the Dead. So this is, in my opinion, the worst part of the DLC. This is the worst level design, the worst enemy placement. It is everything that is wrong with imitation Souls game level design. It's uninspired, it's maze-like without any real reason to be that way, and it is so jam-packed full of enemies, it just reminds me of a confusing Vestat corridor, because that's exactly what it is. And to add insult to injury, there are statues in this place and enemies in this place which build up your petrify meter. So it's just this massive cockblock area of, if you don't die by petrify, you get lost and whittled down by the enemies. And it all stems from the fact that it's a clusterfuck of design, and none of it is fun. And I don't understand at all how you can have such interesting geometry in Shulver, and then you can have this, which is completely uninspired, very frustrating and annoying, and just culminates all the aspects of the game that wear thin on players, like being stunned by spray, getting hit in the head by spray and getting stunned. You know, a bunch of enemies all in close quarters. Like, it's a confusing part, and I don't understand it, and I'm curious if anybody has an alternate method on exactly why that area has any redeemable faults, because I just don't think it does. But my strategy here is simple, guys. This is a gank squad. The gank squad is very dangerous. Obviously, it's a gank. I'm using Scraps of Life to try and pancake the Havel in particular. It works sometimes, other times it doesn't. The arena here is the biggest enemy, because if you fall in the water, you're the only person who will get the movement penalty. Everybody else is fine. If you don't know the layout of the geometry, it's going to be even trickier, because you don't know where you're safe from the archer. You don't know where you can go to kind of You know, exploit the AI's pathing ability. And just be aware that the archer, when you get close to him, can sometimes pull out an S-Stock. But this is on new game. And I thought I would do considerably more damage with the parries. But you really don't. And it's a testament to just how tanky a lot of this DLC is. And I'm trying to think back if Artorias of the Abyss was as tanky, and I just don't think it was. Like, the bosses were the biggest shock to the system I think anybody ever got. Because elemental weapons didn't work anymore. Magic didn't work as well as it used to on everything else. It was everything the players who kind of cheesed the game with didn't work. And I think that was a really interesting and an ingenious move by From Software. See, that guy, that's what the parries should do to everybody else, but the armor modifier just seems to give them shit tons of defense. How would I improve this fight? You might be thinking. Well, the first thing I would do is I would put it in an area that didn't have water. I'd put it in an area that was closer to some of the like the arena. You know, the one that has the two staircases leading up to that top bit? I would have put this there. Or someplace like that, where there's enough tiers and enough geometry so that you can get out of the way of an archer and you can kind of kite things, but it's fair. It doesn't have these cursed statues and things. I would have put it in like a coliseum. And I was really close to being bled and petrified just then, which is not very nice. I just would have put it in an area where it's more fun to fight them. Second thing I would have done is I would have probably made Havel slow walk if I was going to have him there. I would have had him super fat, slow walking, just to make him really intimidating, but nowhere near as fast. You'll notice he keeps up with the Alva Knight in every single situation, in spite of the fact he is wearing full Havel's, Dragon's Tooth, and Havel's shield, which we all know is bullshitty, but that's what he's doing. But I think I would have made the NPCs a little bit more interesting. Like, I like the dual Berserker Blade, I think that's a cool touch, but it's obviously just a reskinned Berserker NPC. That's funny. I don't know. I think I would have just had batshit crazy NPCs. Like, super obscure weapon choices, and you know, they had the opportunity to do something like that. They just chose not to. They just chose to have it as a couple of recycled people. But I would have liked it to have been an actual boss, because there's a lot of debate right now on some of my comment sections whether or not this classifies as a boss or as just lazy game design as a gank. A lot of people enjoy it because it's a gank. I enjoy the fight, don't get me wrong. I think it's a really fun fight. I'd prefer it in Dark Souls 1, because in Dark Souls 1 you could absolutely destroy this. Absolutely. But when you think about it, is it really any different to the Ruin Sentinels? The Ruin Sentinels were a boss that turned up later on as an enemy. There was just 3 of them. It's... I suppose it all depends on the person. Is it uninspiring? I suppose so. But what were you expecting? It's all a product of your expectations. I personally wasn't expecting too much for this DLC, so the fact that it disappointed me in ways, which it did, is kind of sad. But I also think there's a lot of goodness here, and there's a lot of things that people will like. So if you're in love with Dark Souls 2 and you want more of it, then this is the perfect package for you. If you're beginning to see Dark Souls 2's flaws, and you're getting less and less patient with it as a game, I think this DLC might hurt you. If you've been playing other games that run at 60 frames per second, that are incredibly responsive and high octane and fast, then I think that this is probably going to frustrate you more than you will enjoy it. But it's, once again, it's all a product of expectation. So thank you very much for watching. I hope somewhere in this sequence you found some kind of guidance if you were struggling with anything. And as always, you take care now.